The floorboards splintered under my bare feet as I stumbled back, the force of the door slamming against the wall still echoing in my ears. My father stood silhouetted in the doorway, his face a mask of fury I hadn't seen in years, not since before. The words he spat out hung in the air, cold and sharp. "Pack your things and give your room now." He didn't yell, didn't scream, just that flat, dead tone that promised a world of pain. They thought they could just erase me, like I was nothing, like the years we shared, the memories we made, were just some disposable thing they could toss aside. If you have a sister who's always been there for you, subscribe now. It hadn't always been like this. There was a time when our house felt like a home, filled with laughter and the comforting aroma of my mother's baking. My room, now under siege, was once my sanctuary, a space I'd painstakingly decorated with posters of my favorite bands, fairy lights casting a warm glow on the walls adorned with photos of friends and family. It was where I poured my heart into journals, dreamed big dreams, and found solace from the everyday dramas of teenage life. My name is Alina, and I never imagined my own father could do this to me. Dad used to help me with my homework, patiently explaining complex equations until the light bulb finally went on. He taught me how to ride my bike, running alongside me, his hand steadying the handlebars until I found my balance. He was my hero, the man I looked up to, the one I thought would always be there to protect me. Mom, of course, was the glue that held us all together. Her infectious optimism could brighten even the gloomiest day, and her unwavering belief in me gave me the courage to pursue my passions. My brother, Liam, was my partner in crime, always ready with a witty comeback or a mischievous prank. We built forts in the living room, staged elaborate plays for our parents, and shared secrets whispered in the dark. We were a family, a unit, an unbreakable bond, or so I thought. The change was gradual, insidious. It started with subtle shifts in my father's behavior, a curtness in his tone, a faraway look in his eyes. He began spending more time at work, coming home late, often smelling of strong drinks and cheap perfume. The easy banter between him and Mom faded, replaced by tense silences and strained smiles. Liam noticed it too. We'd exchange worried glances across the dinner table, the unspoken question hanging heavy in the air. What was happening to our family? Then came the arguments, hushed at first, then escalating into full-blown shouting matches that shook the house to its foundations. I'd retreat to my room, curling up on my bed, burying my head under the covers, trying to block out the sounds of my parents tearing each other apart. The warmth and security I once felt within those walls began to dissipate, replaced by a gnawing anxiety that never seemed to let up. One evening, I overheard a conversation between my parents that shattered the illusion of our perfect family. My father was talking about another woman, confessing his love for her, admitting that he wanted to leave Mom. The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. I felt a surge of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. How could he do this? How could he throw away everything we had built together for some fleeting infatuation? I confronted him the next morning, my voice trembling with rage and hurt. He denied it at first, but when I told him I had overheard his conversation, he couldn't meet my eyes. He mumbled something about being unhappy, about needing a change, about deserving to be with someone who truly understood him. His words were hollow, self-serving, and utterly devoid of any remorse. From that moment on, the distance between us grew exponentially. He became a stranger, a shell of the man I once knew and loved. He avoided me, barely acknowledging my existence, as if I were a ghost haunting the hallways of our home. And then there was my stepsister, Chloe, who suddenly appeared in our lives, flaunting her designer clothes and her entitled attitude. She acted like she already owned the place, strutting around like some kind of queen. She would deliberately leave her things scattered around, knowing it would annoy me, and she would make snide remarks about my clothes and my friends. The person I trusted most was one of them. The floorboards felt colder now, each step a reminder of my displacement. The house, once a haven, now echoed with the hollowness of my father's betrayal. Sleep became a battlefield, my mind replaying his words, Chloe's smug face, Mom's quiet sorrow. Every morning, I woke up exhausted, the weight of injustice pressing down on me. I tried talking to my father, pleading with him to reconsider, to remember the family we once were. But his eyes were glazed over, his mind consumed by this new life he was so desperately trying to build. My words bounced off him like pebbles against a stone wall, leaving me feeling helpless and defeated. Mom retreated into herself, spending hours in the garden, tending to her flowers with a fierce determination, as if she could somehow nurture our broken family back to health. But the vibrant colors of her blooms couldn't mask the sadness in her eyes, the weariness in her voice. Liam tried to be strong for both of us, but I could see the pain etched on his face, the anger simmering beneath the surface. We huddled together in his room at night, sharing whispered anxieties, trying to make sense of the chaos that had engulfed our lives. Chloe, meanwhile, reveled in the turmoil, basking in the attention she was receiving from my father. She seemed to delight in making my life miserable, leaving passive-aggressive notes on my door, spreading rumors about me at school, even going so far as to borrow my clothes without asking, only to return them stained or damaged. I tried to ignore her, to rise above her petty games, but her constant taunts chipped away at my resolve, leaving me feeling raw and vulnerable. One afternoon, I came home from school to find my room ransacked. My drawers had been emptied, my books tossed on the floor, my personal belongings scattered everywhere. A wave of fury washed over me, so intense that my vision blurred. I knew instantly who was responsible. I confronted Chloe, my voice trembling with rage. She smirked, denying any involvement, but her eyes betrayed her guilt. "Maybe you should learn to keep your things in order," she sneered, her voice dripping with malice. That was the final straw. Something inside me snapped. I lunged at her, grabbing her by the hair, intent on making her pay for the torment she had inflicted on me. But my father intervened, pulling me away, his face contorted with anger. "How dare you attack your sister?" he roared, completely ignoring Chloe's smug expression. He grounded me, forbidding me from seeing my friends, taking away my phone and my laptop. I was trapped, isolated, and utterly powerless. As I sat alone in my room, staring at the mess that Chloe had created, a new feeling began to emerge, a cold, burning resolve. I realized that I couldn't reason with my father, that I couldn't appeal to Chloe's non-existent sense of decency. The only way to reclaim my life, to restore my family, was to fight back. The day they thought they broke me was the day revenge was born. I stayed silent, because the plan had begun. The silence in my room was a thick blanket suffocating me. The four walls felt like they were closing in, mirroring the way my own family had shrunk, contracted around this black hole of betrayal. Grounded, phoneless, laptop gone, I was cut off from the world, a prisoner in my own home. But the true prison wasn't the lack of devices. It was the realization that my father, the man who was supposed to protect me, had become my jailer. He moved Chloe into my room while I was forced into the damp, musty basement. They thought I was done, but I was counting every second. The basement was cold and damp, the air thick with the smell of mildew and forgotten things. The single, small window offered a glimpse of the outside world, but it was high up, almost mocking me with its unattainable view. The concrete floor was unforgiving, the bare bulb overhead casting harsh shadows that danced across the walls, making the space feel even more oppressive. This was my new reality, my new home. It was a symbol of everything I had lost, a constant reminder of my father's cruelty and Chloe's insidious influence. The injustice of it all was a bitter pill to swallow. I spent hours huddled under a thin blanket, shivering, trying to find some semblance of comfort. My mind raced, replaying every hurtful word, every spiteful act, every moment of betrayal. I felt a surge of anger so intense that it threatened to consume me. I wanted to lash out, to scream, to break things, but I knew that it would only make things worse. They would use it as further evidence of my bad behavior, justifying their actions and solidifying my imprisonment. So I swallowed my rage, forcing it down, burying it deep inside where it festered and grew. Sleep offered little respite. Nightmares plagued me, vivid and disturbing visions of my father turning his back on me, of Chloe smirking as she pushed me down a dark hole, of my mother's tear-streaked face. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding, gasping for air, the oppressive weight of my situation crushing me. Even food became a battleground. Chloe would flaunt elaborate meals in front of me, knowing that I was stuck eating leftovers in the basement. She would make snide remarks about my appetite, implying that I was ungrateful and undeserving. My step-monster and father laughed together. The isolation was the hardest part. Cut off from my friends, unable to communicate with the outside world, I felt like I was slowly disappearing. The vibrant, outgoing girl I once was fading away, replaced by a shadow of her former self. I started to question my own sanity, wondering if I was exaggerating things, if I was somehow responsible for the chaos that had befallen my family. Maybe I was the problem. The silence became a tormentor, amplifying my doubts and fears, eroding my sense of self. Then one day, rummaging through a box of old books in the corner of the basement, I found something that sparked a flicker of hope within me. It was my grandfather's old journal, a worn, leather-bound volume filled with his elegant handwriting. He had been a lawyer, a brilliant and respected man who had dedicated his life to fighting for justice. As I flipped through the pages, I was captivated by his stories of overcoming adversity, of standing up for what was right, of using his intellect and his skills to make a difference in the world. His words resonated with me, igniting a fire within me, reminding me that I was not powerless, that I had the strength and the intelligence to fight back. I began to devour the journal, absorbing his wisdom, learning from his experiences, drawing inspiration from his unwavering commitment to justice. It was as if he was speaking to me from beyond the grave, urging me to find my voice, to stand up for myself, to reclaim my life. The journal became my lifeline, my confidant, my source of strength. It reminded me that I was not alone, that I had a legacy to uphold, that I was capable of more than I ever thought possible. And slowly, gradually, the darkness began to recede, replaced by a glimmer of hope, a flicker of determination. Their biggest weakness, they thought they were untouchable. The basement was still cold and damp, the silence still oppressive, but something had changed within me. I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor. I was a planner. I would use their arrogance against them. I would observe, I would learn, I would gather evidence, and I would wait for the perfect moment to strike. The day they tried to bury me was the day they planted the seeds of their own destruction. My plan was simple: document everything. Their smug faces would soon be wiped clean. I smiled. I played their game, but I was recording everything. My grandfather's journal became my Bible, its pages filled with legal strategies and forensic insights I never knew existed. He had cases involving everything from property disputes to fraud, and his meticulous notes were a goldmine. I started small, observing Chloe's habits, noting her comings and goings, her online activity. She was addicted to social media, constantly posting photos of herself, bragging about her latest purchases, and gossiping about her friends. It was pathetic, but it was also valuable information. I needed evidence, irrefutable proof of their cruelty. So I started documenting everything. The basement window, though small, offered a view of the backyard. I positioned a small, inexpensive digital camera, one I'd managed to salvage from an old box of discarded electronics, to capture Chloe's interactions with my father. It wasn't high-tech, but it was enough to record their conversations, their gestures, their expressions. I learned to lip-read, deciphering their words even when they spoke in hushed tones. It was slow, painstaking work, but I was determined to uncover their secrets. One afternoon, I caught Chloe on camera bragging to her friend about how she had deliberately ruined my favorite dress by pouring bleach on it. The look of malicious glee on her face was chilling. Another time, I recorded my father and Chloe laughing together as they mocked my mother's cooking. The casual cruelty in their voices made my blood boil. I kept meticulous notes, transcribing their conversations, cataloging their offenses. My grandfather's lessons in legal procedure were invaluable. I knew that any evidence I presented had to be credible and admissible in court. I researched the laws regarding harassment, emotional abuse, and property damage. I learned how to properly document evidence, how to maintain a chain of custody, how to avoid any legal pitfalls that could jeopardize my case. The basement became my laboratory, my sanctuary, my war room. I spent hours poring over legal texts, studying forensic techniques, and refining my plan. The dampness and the cold no longer bothered me. I was too focused, too driven, too consumed by my mission. I even managed to rig up a rudimentary surveillance system using an old webcam and a Raspberry Pi computer I had once used for a science project. It wasn't perfect, but it allowed me to monitor the main areas of the house remotely, even when I was confined to the basement. One evening, I discovered something truly shocking. While reviewing the footage from the hidden camera, I saw my father and Chloe going through my mother's jewelry box. They were carefully examining each piece, discussing its value, and making plans to sell it. My mother's jewelry was more than just expensive trinkets. They were family heirlooms, passed down from generations. They were symbols of our history, our heritage, our love. The thought of my father and Chloe pawning them off for their own selfish gain filled me with a righteous fury. This was no longer just about me. It was about protecting my mother, preserving our family legacy, and ensuring that justice was served. I realized I needed more than just recordings. I needed undeniable proof of their financial shenanigans. I remembered my grandfather's notes on forensic accounting. I started researching asset tracing, fraud detection, and financial investigation. It was a daunting task, but I was determined to master it. I needed to understand how they were manipulating the family finances, how they were hiding their assets, and how I could expose their scheme. I knew that time was running out. My father was becoming increasingly impatient, pressuring my mother to sell the house and move into a smaller apartment. I suspected that he was planning to take the money and run, leaving my mother and me with nothing. I had to act fast. The anticipation was almost unbearable. Every day felt like an eternity. I knew that I was walking a tightrope. One wrong move could expose my plan and ruin everything. But I couldn't afford to hesitate. I had come too far, sacrificed too much to back down now. The day they tried to break me was the day they unleashed a force they never imagined. The storm was coming. My obsession with their finances led me to their biggest mistake, the safety deposit box. I overheard Chloe on a poorly disguised phone call, giggling about Dad's little secret and all the shiny things. She mentioned a key, hidden in a book. I knew exactly which book. My grandfather's first edition of The Art of War. A gift from my mother years ago that my father pretended to cherish, but clearly only saw as an object of value. They underestimated my knowledge of the house, my attention to detail. That night, while they were out celebrating their impending victory, I put my plan into action. I slipped upstairs, my heart pounding in my chest, each step measured and silent. The house was eerily quiet, the silence amplifying the sound of my own breathing. I found the book, tucked away on a high shelf in my father's study, gathering dust. My hands trembled as I opened it, carefully extracting the small, silver key hidden within its pages. It was cold to the touch, a symbol of the cold, calculating nature of my father's betrayal. I copied the key using supplies I borrowed from Liam's workshop. The next day, feigning a headache, I stayed home from school. I watched, from my basement window, as my father and Chloe left the house, dressed in their usual smug attire. The moment they were gone, I was in motion. I grabbed my backpack, stuffed with my grandfather's journal, my surveillance equipment, and the copied key. I took the bus to the First National Bank, my anxiety rising with each passing mile. The bank was a fortress of steel and concrete, a symbol of the impenetrable wealth my father was so desperate to acquire. I walked inside, my head held high, trying to project an air of confidence I didn't feel. I approached the teller, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, and requested access to safety deposit box number 317. I presented the key, my hands shaking so violently that I almost dropped it. The teller scrutinized me, her gaze suspicious. I recited the name on the account, my father's full name, and showed her a forged copy of his ID that Liam helped me create. It was a risky move, but I had no other choice. After what felt like an eternity, she disappeared into the vault, returning moments later with a small metal box. She led me to a private viewing room, a sterile, windowless space that felt like a confessional. I took a deep breath and opened the box. Inside, I found a treasure trove of incriminating evidence: stacks of cash, hidden account statements, forged documents, and a detailed plan outlining my father's scheme to defraud my mother and me of our inheritance. There it was. Irrefutable proof of their crimes. My hands trembled as I photographed every document, every piece of evidence, meticulously documenting their treachery. I felt a surge of triumph, a sense of vindication that washed over me, erasing the pain and the humiliation I had endured for so long. But I knew that this was only the beginning. I had the evidence, but I needed to expose them, to make them pay for their sins. I carefully placed everything back in the box, returned it to the teller, and left the bank, feeling like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I now knew their biggest secret, but simply having the evidence wasn't enough. I needed to create a situation where they couldn't deny it, couldn't weasel their way out of it. I needed to lure them into a trap, a public trap. That night, I left a cryptic note on Chloe's bed. I know about the safety deposit box. Meet me at the town hall tomorrow at noon if you want to keep your secret. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. She would know it was me. The town hall. The site of so many family milestones, now the stage for their downfall. I knew they couldn't resist the urge to protect their secret. They would come, and I would be waiting. The pieces were in place. The stage was set. Tomorrow, their world would crumble. The town hall clock tower chimed noon, its somber melody echoing across the square. I stood on the steps, clutching my grandfather's journal, my heart a steady drum against my ribs. I saw them coming, Chloe in her designer dress, my father beside her, his face a mask of forced calm. They thought they were meeting a desperate, cornered girl. They were about to face a reckoning. As they approached, I raised my voice, projecting it across the square. I know about the safety deposit box and everything in it. My words hung in the air, drawing the attention of passers-by, the lunchtime crowd, the shopkeepers peering from their doorways. Chloe's face paled, her carefully applied makeup unable to conceal her sudden fear. My father's eyes narrowed, his composure cracking. "What are you talking about?" he snarled, grabbing my arm. "Let's go somewhere private." I shook him off, my voice rising louder. "I'm talking about the stolen money, the forged documents, the plan to leave my mother with nothing." I pulled out the copied documents from the safety deposit box, scattering them like confetti across the steps of the town hall. "Here's your little secret, Dad. Want to explain to everyone where this money came from." A hush fell over the crowd as people began to pick up the documents, reading the damning evidence. Chloe tried to snatch the papers, but I sidestepped her, holding up a flash drive. "Oh, and I almost forgot. I have digital copies of everything, including recordings of your little chats. Shall we play them for everyone?" I pressed play on a small speaker I had hidden in my bag. Chloe's voice, clear and unmistakable, filled the square, bragging about ruining my dress, mocking my mother. Then my father's voice, cold and calculating, discussing his plans to abandon us. The crowd gasped, their murmurs of disbelief growing louder. My father's face was a mask of fury and desperation. He lunged for the speaker, but I was ready for him. I stepped back, activating a small, portable projector I had set up earlier. Images of the documents from the safety deposit box flashed on the side of the town hall, magnified for all to see. There was no denying it. The evidence was overwhelming. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as they approached. Someone in the crowd must have called them. My father's face crumbled. The carefully constructed facade of respectability shattered, revealing the cruel, greedy man beneath. Chloe began to sob, her dreams of wealth and status dissolving before her eyes. The police arrived, pushing through the crowd, their eyes scanning the scene. They approached my father, their voices stern. "Sir, we need you to come with us. We have some questions regarding allegations of fraud and embezzlement." As they led him away in handcuffs, he looked back at me, his eyes filled with hatred and defeat. Chloe sank to her knees, her mascara running down her face, her perfect world reduced to ashes. The crowd erupted in a mixture of shock, anger, and vindication. Some people clapped, others shouted insults at my father and Chloe. A few approached me, offering words of support and encouragement. My mother arrived, her face pale with shock, her eyes filled with a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. She rushed to my side, wrapping her arms around me, holding me tight. "I don't know what you did, but thank you," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you." In the days that followed, their world imploded. My father was charged with multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. Chloe's reputation was ruined, her social circle vanished, and she was ostracized by everyone she knew. The house was seized, their assets frozen, and their ill-gotten gains were returned to their rightful owners. They lost everything. I just smiled. Later, sitting with my mother, watching the sunset, I thought about everything that had happened. The pain, the betrayal, the planning, the execution. My mother squeezed my hand. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. I nodded, a sense of peace washing over me. "I am now." Revenge isn't sweet, it's necessary. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.